Okay, folks, just taking a little break from previous testing shenanigans. I got my 271, well, not mine, it's in-laws, but, you know, might as well be mine. And John Thread 2159 Turbo. Let's talk chain sizes. I know it's a topic covered fairly often. A lot of people like talking about it because it's worth talking about. So, focus you. Come on. You can do it. I believe in you. Come on, phone. Jeez. Come on. Focus you. Jesus. There. Okay. Alright, so you got two types of cutters. You got what's called semi-chisel and full chisel. What that means is a full chisel. Alright, where am I at? I am here. Okay. So a full chisel has a 90-degree angle from your top plate to the side of your cutter. A semi-chisel is rounded. And what that means in the cut is a full chisel is generally going to be more aggressive, and a semi-chisel is going to be less aggressive, obviously. So I found that I can get full chisel chain stupid wicked sharp, and it's not hard. You get a nice sharp point up here, get yourself a nice gullet. Okay, good old Buckin' Billy Ray taught me all about that. You got to get the gullet, because if you ain't got no gullet, you ain't got no chip flow. If you ain't got no chip flow, you ain't got no cut. Right? So I prefer full chisel chain. I also prefer single depth gauges. So most new saws that you get are going to have what's called safety chain on it. It's not really that much safer. I mean, it helps a little bit, but I don't like that type of chain because of how I sharpen and the depth gauges I use for my rakers. I use the Husqvarna depth gauge. It looks like a piece of folded over sheet metal. It's back at the house. I'll show you here in a bit. But yeah, it works real good, and the safety chain doesn't work with that type of depth gauge. So this is what's called 325 063 chain. So 325 is your measurement in inches. If you take the distance from center to center of any three rivets divided by 2, that's your pitch. Okay, that's roughly that's going to give you how big your chain is, right? So 325 is a fairly standard chain for anything under 60 cc's. Once you hit 60 cc's, really I don't see a huge point in running 325 chain. 60 cc saws can generally pull 3/8 chain just fine. And if you're talking ancient saws, then you get into like 1/2-inch pitch, and they're just big torque monsters. Anyway, most of your larger homeowner saws and your smaller pro saws are going to have 325. There's also 3/8 Pico or 3/8 Low Pro. That's still a 3/8 distance between your three rivets, but the chain's about half the size. That's for like your MS 170s, your Husqvarna 141s, or whatever it is now. The smaller, like 30, 40 cc saws are probably going to run 3/8 Pico. So, the way you tell this, without just, learning what it looks like, 325 versus, 3/8, right? And you can't really tell because it's a phone and light's not that great, but I sharpen chain at work, pretty much all day long, so I've figured out what they look like. So 325 chain, it's nice chain. Steel, in my opinion, makes Steel and Oregon. Steel and Oregon are the two chain brands to go with. This is a Steel chain. That over there, focus, is an Oregon chain. Okay. Now, Steel chain it's just good chain. I mean, the cutters are fairly durable. They sharpen really nice. Factory out of the box steel chain is really, really good. And easiest way to tell between safety chain and non-safety chain, at least for the steel chain, is your non-safety chain is going to have somewhere on it a yellow tie strap. Okay, so it's yellow chain. Green chain is going to have a green tie strap. As far as cutting speed goes, I honestly think Steel's Rapid Super cuts the fastest out of what they got. Unless you want to get into square ground, I'm not getting into square ground right now. Square ground is a whole nother ball field, whole nother game. That stuff's gnarly. So, perks of full chisel chain: easy to sharpen, cuts fast, and that's about it. Everything else is downsides. It's going to have higher kickback tendencies. It's not going to stay sharp as long than a semi-chisel chain. Because once you lose this point, I mean, you're pretty much hooped. Granted, I found it easier to get that point on full chisel. It's hard to get a really nice point on semi-chisel. So that's, again, this is the 325 chain. Okay. Nice chain. Ugh. Here on my John shred, love this thing. Got Oregon 3/8, 058, which, if you know nothing about saws, you know, you're not going to realize that that 058 number is kind of funky. Most 3/8 chain here in the States is going to be 3/8 pitch, 050 gauge. Okay, so the gauge, that second number, I forgot to mention, the 325 chain is 063 gauge. That is your distance in inches of your guide rails in there. So on the 271 over there, it's 0.063 inches wide, the guide rails. And this is 0.058 inches, your guide rails. Excuse me. Which is weird. Most 3/8 bars here in the States run 050, so it's smaller. When I got this saw, it had a 3/8 050 chain on it, and it had all sorts of flop and wiggle and wobble, and it cut like crap because the chain wasn't held straight as it cut through the wood. So I went online because I checked my local dealers, I checked, you know, all the hardware stores. Nobody carries 058 chain around me because it's more of a Swedish European thing, 058 chain. So I had to order this online. Thankfully, it was cheap. It was like $20 for a 72 drive link chain, which is, in my opinion, fairly cheap. So again, this is a single raker chain. It's not a safety chain. I mean, look at that. Look at that. That's nice right there, I think. I think that's pretty good. And, come on, focus. Come on, you can do it. There we go. There we go. Look at that guy right there. Yeah, nice chain. I know, I got a little excited about it. Sorry. Another thing to note on chains, at least the decent chains, bigger stuff especially, it's going to have some sort of mark on it to let you know when the chain is dead, so to speak. So you can file this all the way back, and that's not exactly a very straight cutter. Sorry. Let me find a nicer one. There we go. That's nice. That's nice and straight. You can file this all the way back to that line. The steel chain has it as well. Yeah, so you can get that tooth all the way back there. Now, I've heard that, generally speaking, as the cutter gets shorter and shorter and shorter, it'll actually cut faster because you have more space for chips to move and collect. Now, as it gets shorter, you have to take down your depth gauges. If you don't take your depth gauges down, you're not going to cut, because the point of your tooth is going to be below your depth gauge. So, you know, you have to take your depth gauges down, get Get a raker gauge, depth gauge, raker gauge, whatever you want to call it. File your rakers. Okay. You don't want to get them too aggressive, because what's going to happen is you're going to go in the cut and the saw is just going to bite and bind, and it's not going to cut. It's a fine balance between cutting more and cutting less. Okay. You want to cut, it's like Goldilocks. If you take them too low, it's like Papa Bear's porridge. It's too hot. If you don't file them at all, it's like Mama Bear's porridge. It's too cold. It's not cutting enough. It's not biting enough. What you want is whatever that kid bear's name was, or whatever they call them. Nice. You want a nice, happy medium. It also depends on the kind of wood you're cutting. If you're cutting hardwood, generally speaking, you want a higher raker, so you take less of a bite, so you can keep your chain speed up. If you're cutting softwood, you can file them suckers down, fairly low in comparison, and you can take bigger chunks and you can cut faster. Okay. As far as I've seen, unless you go online or go into a big box store, you're not going to find weird off-brand chain. I would advise, if you're serious about getting into this, stay away from the funky off-brand stuff. Stick with Oregon, stick with steel. Okay? I'm not going to say whichever's cheaper. I'm going to say get them both. Get the same exact chain. Find out what kind of chain you like. Get 2 exact same chains from both manufacturers, whatever size you need, whether it be 3/8 050 72 for a 3/8 20-inch bar, or 325 063, well, what is that, 74? Yeah. Get whatever chain's going to fit on your saw. Get identical from both brands. Test them out of the box. See how long it takes for them to get dull. Test how they sharpen. Just figure out what you like. And then once you find what you like, stick with it until you find something new or different that you want to try out. Okay. As far as chain tension goes, too loose, you run the risk of your chain flying off your bar. Excuse me, sorry. Ugh. Yeah, little rabbit trail here. If you love popping ibuprofen and Tylenol, slow that down as much as you can, because if you keep doing that, it's going to burn holes in your stomach and it's going to give you stomach ulcers. But if you're in the service, what do they say? Drink water, change your socks, take some Motrin. Well, it gives you stomach ulcers. So when you're 24 and you have stomach ulcers, it sucks. Anyway, sorry. So, figure out what kind of chain you like. Learn how to hand file. 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 If you're gonna cut firewood, learn how to hand file. It's gonna take you 2-3 chains. You're gonna mess them up. You're not gonna win this right out of the gate. Okay. And that's fine, because in the long run, you will be able to cut faster, and you will be more satisfied with your work. You'll have more satisfaction from it, because you can say, yeah, I sharpen that chain and it cuts faster than factory chain, which is completely feasible. Just like cars and chainsaws and everything else, they are fairly detuned from the factory for safety reasons, because the manufacturers don't want people getting hurt. But once you learn how to do it, go ahead and do it. And it'll save you money in the long run. You can make your chains last longer. You can make your bars last longer. Your saws last longer. Everything cuts faster, smoother, cooler. You're not buying as many chains. If you have a place local, they'll sharpen chains. A lot of chainsaw dealers worth their salt will have a grinder. They can grind chain for you. If that is the case, if you do have someone local that grinds chain, I'd say test them. Just beat the hell out of one chain you have. Just beat the snot out of it. And then take it in and see what they do with it. If you get your teeth back, and they're going to be shorter, obviously, you have to remove material to get it sharp. You have to. That's how it works. But if there's no gullet, if there's no point on them, if they're blue, you can see if they cut it too fast or if they just totally wrecked your chain. And if they wreck your chain, don't ever take a chain back there ever again. Don't do it. Learn how to hand file. Files are cheap. File guides are cheap. You know, it's satisfying to get into. So, yeah, I'd say hand file. And it's something you can do out in the field. If you're out in the field, like I am today, woohoo! Stinking windy. That's why I'm not dropping trees too. Dropping trees in the wind, sketchy. Super, super sketchy. But yeah, if you're out in the field and you touch dirt or you hit a nail or something, or you know, you're cutting some dirty wood, you know, you can file it up, you can touch it up, and you're back to the races out in the field. You don't have to go back to the house or nothing. You just, you know, you do it right out in the field. Get a stump vise, or heck, even what I'll do sometimes is I'll get on my knees, stick the saw up here, grab between my legs. I mean, it's not great on the back, but you know, you keep your bar fairly secure, and then you just get, you know, a little ways up from the power head so you have room to work. File your chain, go to the next tooth, do it, next tooth, do it. You know, this chain takes, I don't know, for me, 10-15 minutes to file. That's including rakers. You know, and that's when it's in bad shape. If you're doing like what they suggest, which is every tank of gas, you know, every tank of gas, put one stroke on your chain on each cutter, then it'll go faster, obviously. Man, it is just, yeah, we're gonna play with that next. And I say play with because, like I said before, I don't really cut a whole lot of firewood, at least for here. I cut firewood for other family members, but out here it's just, you know, I got 10 acres of property, woods, a couple of trails, and they let me come back here and play around, you know, cut stuff up. It's a lot of fun. Get out of the house, get out in nature, you know. There's nothing like going out in the nice quiet woods and find what you're gonna cut. Put your saw down, get yourself situated, pick your saw back up, switch it on, give her a couple of pulls, and it's like you're grabbing Mother Nature by her gonads and you are showing her what for. But only in the right way. Only in the right way. You know, you don't want to cut down trees that you don't have to. Like that guy right there. He looks pretty gnarly. He's broken off the top. He's probably dead. He'll come down either on his own. I mean, he's far enough away. He's not going to hit anything. So he can fall on his own. I'm not worried about that. That smaller guy next to him, broken off the top. You know, a couple suckers growing out of him at the top. But, I mean, he's shot. You know, but something like this, you know, got a nice crown on her. You know, not super crowded. I mean, it is pretty crowded back here, but he's fine. Don't gotta touch him. Ain't gotta touch him. Ain't gotta touch any of those over there. So, you know, figure out what you're gonna cut, what's appropriate to cut. And if you have to clear cut, clear cut. If you're building a house on a property and it's overgrown, shoot, cut everything down, split it, save it for firewood. If you're not gonna burn firewood, find somebody who does. Don't let it go to waste. Anyway, I think I'll head back to the house now, top off these two wonderful pieces of equipment, and then I think I'll come back here. I might warm up a little bit. It's below 30. It's like 25 and windy. It's pretty chilly. So, anyway, I'll be back at her in a few minutes. All right, see you guys later.